I'll go first. I am Caitlin Stripage. I'm the executive editor at the Athens Banner-Herald. I took over about a year ago. And so anything that's been happening in about the past year, I've been around for. So it was an odd time to take over this job, but very grateful to be here in Athens and very grateful to be here talking with you all about Report for America and what we're doing.
Thank you, Caitlin.
I am Todd Franco. I work for Report for America. I'm talking to you from bucolic Youngstown, Ohio, right between Cleveland and Pittsburgh. And I've been with RFA for 18 months after a 30-year career in local news, same as Caitlin's job.
Good. Nice.
Hi, my name's Amy Bond. I am the manager of local sustainability for the East Coast for Report for America. This is my 8th week, so I'm very excited to be part of the organization. And Caitlin was actually the first newsroom to reach out and say, hey, I've got this great idea. I know I've got this really generous community and a community foundation that's excited to be partnering with us. So happy to be on the call and look forward to working with all of you. And thanks so much for having us.
Thank you so much. Well, I'll make it short and sweet, and then I'll turn it over to you guys. But for anybody who'll be watching this later, Sarah McKinney with the Athens Area Community Foundation and several families were invited today to just listen about the possibility for local philanthropy to play a role in our local journalism. I shared an article with a few of the people who were invited to this call today, and I'll share that again. And really, it's an interesting dive into how and why local philanthropy is having a renewed call to play a part in our local news. The biggest learn for me really is the advertising piece, where digital marketing has really stepped out into the forefront that has affected our local news sources and affects civic life in many different ways. And there was a great quote in the article that I sent that the loss of local news leads to the loss of our community's feeling and being heard. And in today, 2021, I think there needs to be no definition to why people in general need to be heard. And I'm not suggesting that anybody on this call or who are listening to it should fund this call to action, but rather I think it is a strategic suggestion to consider as the Athens Area Community Foundation and those we work with, how philanthropy could potentially play a role. There's some elephants in the room, and I'll ask Todd or Caitlin to address those in terms of how our local media is owned. But there's also some great potential in the room with Report for America and a grant that's already been awarded to Athens for us to lift up some issues about equity and inclusivity. So Caitlin, I think I'll be turning it over to you if I'm not mistaken. I don't have my agenda right in front of me. No, Todd, I apologize.
Todd goes first and then
Todd,
me, yeah.
I apologize. Todd, if you'll kick us off and spend about 5 minutes or less sharing with us next steps.
You bet. Thank you very much. So Report for America is on a mission to help reinvigorate local journalism and almost convert the community understanding to it's a service role within your community, much like police, fire, teachers, all those services. The need for local news and the reporters who do it is just a vital content to any community. Our main job is to introduce national, state, and local philanthropy into the funding model. Before I had this job, I was a newsroom guy in Youngstown, where I still live, and it was my 5th great Midwest city, and we closed the Youngstown Vindicator in 2019. As editor, I'd spent a lot of sessions like this talking to folks that this could happen, and there was a sense of denial that the Vindicator's been here for 150 years. If you Google the Vindicator and Todd Franco, you'll see stories. National media converged on us because it was like a sizable newspaper to lose in the national ecosystem. Despite all the conversations that it could happen, people were stunned to the point of tears. A community session was organized 2 weeks after we announced our word, just stunned that this could happen. So that's the loss that the citizens felt when their core news model disappeared. For 300 years, news has been funded by advertising. So if you think about that, Ben Franklin was a publisher, and he funded his paper the same way we did on the whims of Best Buy, Walmart, Kohl's, Food Line, and such. That model is gone. And everything that was good about your town or was a challenge the jobs, the education, the sports teams, high school football, Georgia, Georgia football, everything that your local newspaper, and let's expand it beyond your local newspaper, everything that your local news ecosystem does for the betterment of what's good about your town, it's 80% funded by advertising. And it's gone. It didn't flee by anything going wrong. It was just this whim of a marriage that was never intended to be. Profits from advertising by your local media ownership got churned back into local news coverage. Whereas now, the advertising model that retail prefers is Google, Facebook, Amazon, and Apple. Since about 2008, those four entities have combined to have an impact where $32 billion in local news advertising revenue that helped fund what we've said about news, $32 billion has disappeared from the $45 billion base that the system had in 2008. In 1999, it was a $95 billion industry. So if you think of 2003, Craigslist, MLS listings, cars, that's what opened the door. And then about 2008, 9, and 10, the energy of Facebook, Google, Amazon, and Apple really converged on society. And the unintended casualty was local news, kind of similar to the unintended casualty of local malls. I mean, the same kind of retail emptiness and challenges you're seeing in that also impacted your local news. RFA started in 2017 as a test with about $250,000 in philanthropy and about 12 reporters. That was in 2017. We're now entering our fourth program year this coming June, and we're going to be a $12 million organization with 300 reporters around the country. All of it with philanthropy participating where advertising has disappeared. Philanthropy is not going to replace all of that, but you want to have some stable storytelling, professional storytelling. I mean, if you think of your fire service, if you think of your police service, or even your educators, you wouldn't want part-time, good-natured citizens being your police force, being your fire force, being your teachers educating your kids. And I think you want the same thing with your storytelling. And we just finished our 2020 report. And as I said, growing from 250,000 tests to a 12 million, we're seeing great success stories around the country with local news leaders partnering with foundations to rally the community to recognize that if we want local news, the 300-year gift we've had of advertising supporting it is done. And we got to start working toward another model. And that's kind of what we're seeing. And that's the opportunity to talk about here today.
Thank you so much, Todd. Caitlin, I'll let you pick it up from there, and then we'll open up for some questions after you're finished.
Perfect. Yeah. And I'll try to keep it short and sweet so that way we can keep it mostly for questions. But yeah, so again, thank you guys for being here. Anyone who's listening, because afterward, I really do appreciate your time and listening. And I hope that you do have questions for me, because that means you care. And that's what I always say to readers and people interested in local news. But I do have notes. So if you see me eyeballing, just that's what I'm looking at as my notes. I'm not distracted anyway. But so as Todd mentioned, Report for America, he used a word the other day that I really liked. Report for America replenishes sort of what's been lost in local newsrooms. And the Banner-Herald is super fortunate in that we are getting 2 journalists this summer through a partnership with Report for America. I think it's kind of cool, and it's a little bit of bragging rights that we're getting 2 journalists, and the only other newsroom in the state that gets 2 is the AJC. And so, little old Athens gets to compete with the big dogs there. And I think that's really cool and really important to consider in this. So we're getting 1 photographer and 1 reporter to cover issues of diversity, inclusivity, equity, kind of the broad range of topics that could include. And so that might be food insecurity or housing or education, any sort of topics that fall within the issues of inequities, diversity, any of those things that we see in our community every day that are issues that we're trying to solve for. I know the Community Foundation works in a lot of these capacities already. And so this sort of ties into a lot of work they already do, which is really cool. Report for America does a lot of really great work in bringing really talented core members in. That's the journalists that they bring in. We refer to them as core members. And not only are they giving us a great talent to work with, but then they also let our journalists in the newsroom do more work. Right now we're a small newsroom. We're a really small newsroom. And if you can add 2 people to that, that is such a big boost to our resources. And that frees up people like Wayne Ford to be able to do more work, and our Josh Jones to be able to go to more events. And so it's amplifying what we can do so much more than just 2 journalists, in my opinion. And I think that that's another really cool element of this, that especially for us smaller local newsrooms, it's really, I'm very excited about this opportunity. And so I cannot say enough good things about it. One really unique feature about our Report for America structure that we've built in is that Report for America is very big on mentorship. So typically the journalists they bring in are early career journalists, younger journalists. And so we have built in mentorship through commitment from the University of Georgia. Several professors at the Grady College have committed to mentoring these journalists. But then also we've paired with Clark County Schools to have the journalism programs at both Clark County high schools be involved with this program too. So potentially we could see, our friends, our kids, our grandkids, whatever, if you have students at Clark County schools, they might be working on projects for USA Today. That's like just such a cool thing to me. And I think that that's kind of a unique part of what Report for America is going to allow us to do. And I think that that's really important in this. Sorry, I'm following my notes, like I said. I think that that's kind of the basis of it. And again, I'm going to leave it mostly open for questions and answers. And I have like our full outline of what exactly our lab will look like, timelines and dates. I don't want to get too in the weeds if you guys, depending on what you guys want to know, but I do want this group and anyone who listens to this to know that when I took this job a year ago, like I had a checklist of things I wanted to do in Athens and the things I wanted to do for the Banner-Herald. And this was like number 1 on my list, was to make sure I submitted a proposal to Report for America, because my previous newsroom had 3 Report for America reporters. And the things that those reporters are able to do in their community, it's amazing. They change laws, they change policy, they change lives, they do really incredible work. And so it's not just adding a journalist, it's making really tangible and visible change in your community through the power of local journalism. And I just cannot understate how important and how neat this is and what a great opportunity this is for us. And so I'm very excited about it, and I can't wait to see where we're going to go with this. And we do have some local support already, and I'm super grateful. We're right around $2,500 of local support just from readers right now pitching in, which is an amazing first step. So I'm really excited about what we've gotten so far. And I think that's all I really have to say. I tried to keep it to a tight 5 there, which is really hard to do since this is a big topic for me.
And I'll just kick it off with the first question. Tell us real quick, Caitlin, how much you're trying to raise for what time period and what Report for America's commitment is, just to reiterate that.
Yeah, so Report for America pays half the salaries for both of these journalists. Again, awesome. And it makes it so much more attainable for the local newsrooms when they can commit to that. Our goal is 60,000. Our goal is 60,000. That would fully fund these reporters. That is my goal. Is 60,000. Yes.
Go for it, Jim.
Yeah. 2 or 3 questions. One, if we were to make a contribution, does it go to Report for America or does it go to the Banner-Herald? 2, where these reporters, where are they coming from? What school? And when did they come on board? And how long did they stay?
So you would donate to Report for America. I think technically you donate to the Ground Truth Project, if I'm correct, right, Todd and Amy? That's correct.
Yeah. So we serve Jim as the fiscal sponsor for our for-profit newsrooms. We're going to have about 250 newsrooms that we partner with in June, and of those 250, half are nonprofit, your public radio, your public television, but half are in Caitlin's situation where they're a for-profit. For those groups, we are their fiscal sponsor for IRS opportunities and for the donor opportunities. So the check comes to us, and we immediately turn it over to the newsrooms in quarterly payments throughout that program.
Good.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, yes, your money goes to that. And then I don't know where our journalists are coming from yet. So they're actually in the interview process right now. So Report for America does the initial vetting of the journalists. I just got my final slate for one of the positions, and I can't really reveal who that is yet, but they're amazing, talented journalists from, I'm pretty sure I can say this, most of them are from the South or have some sort of connection to this area. Some may be from the Athens area or be connected to UGA, some may not. And that may or may not play into who we hire, we're going to hire the best people who know how to cover these communities at the end of the day. We're going to treat them like our staff members. And then they are committed. Well, we're committed to the first year. And the second year is, as long as everything is going well, Report for America and the Banner-Herald are still happy with each other, we get a second year extension. And then again, Todd and Amy, correct me if I'm wrong here, but third year is a possibility. But the hope is that we would hire them full-time as staff members after that. So the grant funded part would not be part of it after that. We would hire them full-time as staff after that. So it's not like after 2 years, we dissolve this opportunity. The hope is that we bring them on full-time.
Yeah, we kind of look at ourselves as a hand-holding opportunity with the community in terms of learning this new way of funding local news. We subsidize 50% of the salary in year one and use it as a way to tell to the community of donors. And it's not just foundations and individual gifts, it's also $50 and $25 donors. Raleigh has a great story going on of individual donors at $50 and $75, adding up to $60,000 total just in a Raleigh effort. But we subsidize the first year at 50%. We drop it back to 33% in year two, and then 20% in year three, so that the local participation grows, that by the end of year three, that reporting position is fully paid for by philanthropy in the community, matching up with the for-profit payments that are already going on for Caitlin's current newsroom spending.
Can I just jump in real quick to touch on something Jim asked? I think it's really important to note that while we're the fiscal sponsor, we take no fees. So if you're making a donation and it's coming through Report for America, it's coming through us, we're tracking it, and it goes directly, no fees associated with it, to the newsroom. And one thing, this is because I think Caitlin's awesome, and I don't think she'll brag on herself, but she's already done a crowdsourcing campaign, and she's already demonstrated that there's community support for it. And it's also, you have a very vocal crew. When the donations come in, there's a comment box, and we've gotten some really, really great comments from your community about why this is important. One, we talked about in a staff meeting, it was like, I saw no local news. I want local news, and I'm giving $250 to make that happen. So you've got, we're not at a groundswell yet, but you've got some really, I think you've 40 donors so far. Does that sound, I think that's about right. But it's a really great indicator that you're onto something, and that this is a community where it's fertile ground and it's a desired project.
Daniel, you usually have a question.
I'm just trying to process the long term, what the year three through continuing on, because local journalism is what existed prior to the Google problem that was presented to us, and so what made it go away, and what pitfall do we avoid, for year three through perpetuity? How do we make sure that this isn't just a grant? What is it, the subscription model, and what's the current situation with, the Banner-Herald on subscription status? Is it still consistently declining? And how to be thinking about year three? Year 1 and 2 are easy. Can we rally people in this community to get 60 grand up? I believe so. I think that's, but how do you not let those people get deflated for then the next opportunity? What is it, endowment wise? If you said 6%, that's $1 million, right? To get that up. So really going into it without just that gung ho, of year 1 and 2, but what is that year 3 in sustainability? And what is it that changes in the writing by having these two local people? Because again, we had them when I was growing up. So why did that go away? And what's the messaging that really has to get out there? So I don't know that I've got a question yet. I'm over here calculating numbers. Sitting on my cousin's back porch overlooking a pond. It's a great day for a Zoom call. A lot better in my basement.
I can answer some of those questions, I think, and they might, and I can't answer some of them, but I can't, just out of the lack of knowledge of what the future holds. Here's the thing. The Banner-Herald in the past 5 years has been owned by Morris, been owned by Gatehouse, and then bought by Gannett. So if I try to forecast what 5 years from now is going to look like, I'm going to lose that battle. But we can control certain things. And that's kind of the beauty of this part of it. Again, year 3, I can't forecast what Gannett looks like, but we can control what, if we can come up with $1 million, or if we can come up with a sustainable 60,000 every year over year, we can start building a foundation of something that we can control. Does that make sense in some way? I have to tiptoe around, like I have to be very careful that I don't say something that Gannett's going to think that I'm, taking the ship and running away with it, because I'm not. That's not the plan at the moment. But I do think that taking elements of nonprofit news and nonprofit business and adding them in to the local news environment is what's going to make us solvent and what's going to make us sustainable moving forward. I think that part of the reason you've seen depletion in your local newsroom is because of the lowering profits. And, at the end of the day, we are a business right now. we're not government run. We're not a nonprofit right now. And so at the end of the year, decisions had to be made before me. Again, I've only been here for a year. And in the year I've been here, I've added a person. So I do get to have that one gold star that I've added a whole person since I've been here. And we have not lost any news staff. We even got to replace Lee Shearer's job, which is, another great milestone for us. But so I like where you're going with this, because the point of this is to find a way to not just have this be 2 years. We want it to extend past that. And then I will answer your subscriptions question, that actually in the past year, our digital subscriptions have increased 60% year over year. And our print subscriptions, I honestly didn't check Q4 at the end of last year, but we were about even through the year last year. So it was not the downward trend that I don't have an answer about Q4 or Q1 this year, because I just didn't check, to be honest.
If I could jump in on a couple of Dan's points. Awesome questions. We hear them a lot. So let me give you a couple examples. Where it went, Dan, it goes back to the lost advertising. Advertising subsidized what we enjoyed about news. On the print side, 80% of a newspaper was funded by advertising. 20% was funded by subscriptions. So we really needed Kohl's to be happy, Walmart to be happy, and they all were essentially. It's just, and even back before the box stores, the 90s, when it was all local retailers, you go back to some of those papers in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, chock full of local advertising. When a new method came along, and again, if you go back to 2003, Craigslist, MLS listings for real estate, and autotradercars.com were the first of the doors to open to find other ways to use digital advertising. That opened the door. 2010, it just all collapsed once Facebook and Google really synergized, and with Amazon and Apple. So that's where the money went. As far as sustainability, 2 things to share. The one model we've seen, it's about 10 years old now, is that media, unless I even call them newspapers, and I'll be more comfortable saying this just because of what I've seen, you might not have a newspaper. And Pittsburgh Post-Gazette is going to be 1 day a week print and 6 days a week digital. So it's not necessarily about local newspaper right now. It is right now, but long-term, it's going to be the Banner-Herald in a digital format, possibly in 5 or 6 years. And I think you want that footprint to stay, as opposed to Todd comes to town and opens up the Athens Access, the Athens Administrator. Let's preserve what's here and be fluid with how it might change. In Texas, in Austin, the Texas Tribune, and I'd ask you guys to take a look at the Texas Tribune. Their models essentially become 5 verticals of revenue: philanthropy, advertising, subscriptions, events. Events is a big thing, using their voice as a way to generate revenue in the form of $50 per ticket kind of TED Talks kind of situation. So they're living off of five verticals, 5 revenue verticals that are putting together a very formidable news program. I think that's the future of a lot of local media. The local media you're going to have in Athens needs 5 consistent streams of revenue to support it. What we're seeing in our great cities, and it's every 3 to 6 months, there's a new pivot as people start to digest. Here in Youngstown, a lot of folks thought that Todd Franco was just a jerk. He couldn't run the newspaper. And as we told the story of it's a lost revenue issue, all the reduction in reporters and sports staff and Sunday paper going from 8 sections down to 4 sections. It wasn't just because I was incompetent. I mean, I'm not perfect, but I'm okay at the job. But it was this lost revenue, and we shared that story. When citizens get it, they started to come to the table more, and that's what we're seeing. Foundations, Traverse City, Pittsfield, Massachusetts, Palm Springs, they participate first in a $10,000 to $15,000 grant kind of situation. And then all of a sudden, Traverse City, Palm Springs, they've opened up community funds for people to participate. And that goal of raising, in Caitlin's situation, 60 grand has now grown to 600 grand. Fresno, California is probably our best model. And Seattle Times is just killing it. They got their whole group together and said, hey, we are no longer able to cover to the extent that we want education, crime, jobs, economy. And philanthropy stepped into the Seattle Times, and they've created these verticals. So people who get a taste of it and understand it start to step in for a longer term than just these one-off grants. And it's growing to the point, I'd have you Google the Baltimore Sun, and I'd have you Google Eden Prairie, Minnesota. Those are the 2 examples. Amy, grab me if I'm missing them, but those are 2 examples where 2 foundations stepped in to buy the Baltimore Sun and take it away from national chain ownership to local control. Eden Prairie is even more, it's a suburb of Minneapolis, and much like what happened here in Youngstown, the ownership group closed down the Eden Prairie newspaper. It was no longer profitable. Eden Prairie citizens said, heck with that, we're going to make our own publication. So if you Google Eden Prairie newspaper, you're going to see that local citizens got together to get their news, local news ecosystem restarted. So those are some of the trends I just wanted to highlight that I hope answer some of your interest, Dan. Philanthropy is in it for the long haul. This isn't just a one-off grant. This is a starting point, but it's about a few of us grabbing an oar so that eventually there's 100 of us rowing and then 1,000 of us rowing.
Sorry.
No, I always commit to 30 minutes. And so if we can wrap it up in the next 30 seconds, give them a couple of chances. I want to make sure that we return any other questions. I do always hold my time. Go ahead, Amy.
I was just going to say that, we're here as a little bit of a safety net, and sustainability is in our name. That goes to Daniel's point, what's going to happen. We're not in the business of making an investment that's going to end at the end of 3 years. We're in the investment of, we want to make this permanent, and we want to make sustainable change. And it's in Todd's title, it's in my title, and it's our commitment to you.
Thank you, Amy. Jim and Dorothy, or Daniel, or even the wonderful staff I get to work with, do you have any closing questions for anybody on the call?
Yeah, the question, how long is this for? I mean, the 2 intern type people will be here for how long?
The core members will be here for 2 years. Like, that is the guarantee. I'm going to say guarantee, as long as nothing after the first year goes colossally wrong. And then after that, the intention is that we would retain them for longer than that. But the 2 year is the guarantee.
So the 60,000 we raise is to cover the 2-year period.
It would cover the first year because there's 2 of them.
Okay.
We need 30,000 per reporter per year. And then hopefully the pie gets split by more and more people. And we're actually making these 2 positions full-time, but also adding a couple other positions down the road, which is what some of our newsrooms and some of our communities see. In certain cities, we have a reporter in their 3rd year, and they're also adding a 1st-year reporter.
Well, that's comforting, because I was doing the math and I was thinking, wait a minute, 60,000 plus 60, 120,000 for 2 people for 3 months. God, they're paying reporters a lot more than they used to.
Yeah. Well, we can give you a better numbers breakdown in print, so you can see it laid out per year and over a 3-year.
Good. Thank you.
Kipper or Stephanie, do you have any questions? You don't have to. I just want to make sure.
I had one, and if it's too long an answer, then we can skip it. But Caitlin, you mentioned that you saw some changes in policy and law. Are there a couple of results, like specific results, you can give us as a result of bringing in these extra reporters?
Yes, actually, I think Amy even has them at the ready, because we talked about this beforehand, so that way we could. I think the the easiest answer I can give you really quickly is that in Lexington, they had an Eastern Kentucky reporter who reported on the poor water quality in Eastern Kentucky and how basically citizens were drinking like poisoned water that was like undrinkable. And after he reported on it, they made like wide sweeping changes in the county and in the area to improve the water quality. And so people were not turning on their faucets and getting brown water. And so, I mean, and that very literally happened because he reported that story. That would not have, nothing would have changed without his journalism. And so that's a very, very distinct answer to that. I think Amy has a few other examples and she can share them here, and we can also send out an email if anyone else wants to take a look at.
I pulled 3, but I'm conscious of the time, so we'll send that in a follow-up. We've got a couple stories that I think, you know, from saving a playground to, you know, getting food in kids' bellies during COVID. And we'll get those out to you, but they're compelling.
And key to that
Great,
story,
thank you.
Key to the water story, citizens were trying to get change. They weren't listened to. Once a journalist stepped in and put it to a platform through journalism and truth, the changes happened, including somebody losing their job. I think 3 to 5 million came in from the state to fix it, and the regional director was out of a job. But the citizens have been saying something, no one cared. It's Flint water. It's the Flint issue all over, and it happened in Eastern Kentucky.
Amy, Caitlin, Todd, thank you so much. You nailed it with coming in with some great content for us to listen to. And Newlands and Etting, thank you so much for joining and helping put some questions to the proposed ask here in Athens. For anybody watching this call, just want to reiterate, we invited a couple of the foundations that we get to work with at the Athens Area Community Foundation to be a part of this call to action, to poke some holes, ask some questions, and help us better understand what we can do to support local journalism with local philanthropy. I will be sending out additional information that answers Kipper's great question from some follow-up with Amy, and then we'll reiterate the cost for the next couple of years. And I would love for the Athens Area Community Foundation to consider how we can play a role in the Report for America grant here in Athens, Georgia. Thank you all so much, and I hope you have a great day.